Welcome to the Wing Life Podcast, where we talk about wing foiling and the lifestyles of those who enjoy this great sport. Okay, Richard, I want to say thanks a lot for taking the time out of your busy day to join us here on the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Luke.
Yeah, really looking forward to talking about you and then also AFS. You guys got a lot of products. And our audience is always looking to learn more, and myself as well, about foils, boards, wings, everything. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Cool.
Nice. So let's start out with a little bit about you. How did you first off find wind? Let's start there.
My first background was actually windsurfing. I've started around 18, 19 windsurfing. I'm originally from Paris area, so I was not living on the coastline until I got to about 20 years old, pretty much. So I've done all my studies and pretty much been born and raised around Paris area. But then I moved in the south of France actually to, for my passion of windsurfing. That was getting more and more. I was getting more and more obsessed by it, and I felt like I needed to move on the coastline for some reason, good reasons, I guess. Yeah, so I've been fully into windsurfing for a couple of years, and it was around end of 1998, 1999, something like that. Then it was also the beginning of kiteboarding back then. And I had a chance to try kiteboarding. Then that was actually a great solution for light wind riding, basically for all those non-windy days or light wind days. I was mainly focusing on wave riding, windsurfing. Like I needed quite a decent strength of wind actually to enjoy myself, especially in the south of France. It needs to be quite windy to be wavy. And kiteboarding came along and been hooked on it straight away. Also, I was windsurfing and kiteboarding at the same time, pretty much. Like when it was light, I was kiteboarding, then strong wind windsurfing, then moved full time pretty much in kiteboarding then after, because it was actually the beginning of all the comps in France and in Europe and stuff like that. You know, I think a lot of guys got really excited by this new era of kiteboarding, and I've actually been doing a few comps, doing a few okay results, and got actually the chance to have some sponsorship deal that came pretty quickly actually, because back then a lot of brands were looking for some ambassadors to represent them on comps, either in France or all over the world, pretty much. And I had the chance to find those nice sponsors that gave me the life that I had for about 10 years. So I've been doing a lot of comps and trips for the magazines.
Oh, that's pretty
like
awesome.
Kiteboarding.
Nice. Which brands did you start riding for?
My main sponsor was Flexifoil for quite a while. I've had a few other ones before, but Flexifoil, this UK brand that Aaron Adler was sponsored by, actually. So I've been riding for other brands also before. But it was a great experience because I've learned a lot actually on the whole, all those different spots, in different area and different habits from I would say different markets also in a way. Even though I was not involved into commercial back then, I've still learned a lot about how it was working. You know, in some places there were not so many shops, but loads of kiteboarding schools or kiteboarding centers and stuff like that. You know, in some other country, we were visiting sometimes some shops and everything to do some promotion and stuff like that.
Okay, nice. So that gave you
pretty interesting.
That gave you a pretty good intro into what you're kind of doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was also actually my first go on a foil without being pulled by a boat, basically. I don't know if you were you kiteboarding before?
I started windsurfing. I think I've been doing it for 10 years. My brother was windsurfing before and he
Okay.
got me into it, and then I got hooked and the world stopped and I just windsurfed. And
Okay.
and same kind of thing. We're always looking for some nice waves, nice swell to ride, and then we found that we had to go higher and higher in wind, in swell to get
Yeah.
that. And then foiling came around, and a lot of us then have taken that time to multi-sport kind of master. So it's like focused some of that
Yeah.
energy
Yeah.
towards this. So yeah, I have kited. I wanted to kite a little bit more this summer, actually, just get on the surfboard and get a bit more fluent, just to work on different sports, which I think they're all amazing. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. I
Mhm.
agree with that. And yeah, it's like I've been focusing quite heavily on some sports for some stage and everything, but I'm always more than keen to jump on a windsurf or jump on a kite at the occasion
Oh
for sure.
yeah. Nice. How
So
did it,
it was quite
living just as
interesting.
out of Paris or in Paris, how did you originally get interested in water sports, period, given there's not too much water you're saying around there?
Well, yeah, I think the first good. I mean, my first interest into it was really some of my friends from Paris area. I've gone on holidays with them in the south of
Mm.
France, and they were already windsurfing because they were spending their holidays there since quite a while. And yeah, I got interested by that pretty much straight away. And I think I've always had a taste for water. I think for water sports because even a tiny bit earlier than that, I felt like I was there was something about it, yeah, for me.
Mm-hmm.
So even though my parents were not at all into any water sports or whatever, like it's funny sometimes you feel like the ocean is wants you.
Yeah, there's something because I'm living in Ucluelet right now, just on Vancouver Island, and I'm just started surfing actually. So I go
Okay.
out there and I surf in the evenings, and there's something, yeah, there's something that the ocean calls, and even if you get an hour per
Yeah, yeah,
day and you get to sit there and you get to watch stuff, there's something how it makes you feel. So I was always curious about that. So you went through
yeah.
a bit of a pro career, and then when did you start with AFS?
So HFS is actually pretty recent because I've been working for a long time for Takuma actually. Um, yeah, since the beginning of the company until a year and a half ago, and I really wanted to get more and more involved into R&D, and AFS offered me this opportunity of as we are a foil factory. So it was much easier for me to get involved into product development because there was need and more opportunities basically to develop some new product and everything. Because as a factory, it's actually much easier to release some new foil design or board design because you don't have those strict numbers of foil that you're supposed to release or to sell before you get to be able to develop another one. Basically, there's no MOQ, minimum of quantities and stuff like that. So you could be more creative, I think, if you get this opportunity to be able to go for some pretty specific foil every now and again, even though they are not going to be the most demanded on the market. You end up being able to produce them. So it keeps the excitement of a passionate person like me, I guess.
Oh, that's nice. Okay. Um, so
Mm.
what I would like to kind of go through all the products that you offer, but maybe let's start off with foils. How about there?
Yeah, so we've got a whole range of foil going from beginner to pretty much pro riders. We're trying to push as much as possible the performance side of it also to make sure that people won't get bored after a certain time. I'm fully aware and I'm fully convinced that the gear could get people which get bored pretty quickly with the sensation from what they get from one sport or another one. With the right equipment, it keeps the excitement alive for quite a while. And I'm actually quite convinced by that. So yeah, we go from beginner foils, like let's say Flyer full set, which have a pretty big span, but a really thick profile. So to create this great low end and capacity of flying actually pretty slow So you're able to get a great lift even without going fast. It's pretty reassuring for any beginner. Great low speed lift and great stability in general. And then after we move into the performer range, which is more of a all-round great evolution foil, basically, that's going to allow you to get faster, more glide than the flyer range. And by reducing the size of those foil, you're getting more and more performances, obviously. And it goes from 1,900 centimeters to 750. So there's quite a few sizes on this range. And what we've been releasing the last couple of months is that those all monoblock foils, which are the high end from the AFS Advanced range, which are looking a bit like that. I could show you one. That's the latest release, actually. That's this one. It's the Silk. So those one are full monoblock, except the tail is changeable. So there's a couple of screws for the tail here. But the rest of the foil is a one piece, basically, just attached to mast. So what it allows us is actually to reduce quite dramatically the size of the fuselage. And by then we are reducing quite dramatically also the drag actually of the foil. So those foil have an immense glide, even though this one is more of a surf foil or wave riding foil, we call it. All the other foil from the range from AFS Advance have a huge glide and basically great performance all around, from glide to turning ability to the capacity of handling high speed also. So this one is the Silk. That's the one that we've been developing with Laurent Borgna. He's been specialized into this kind of design for quite a while. He was doing this kind of design for Takuma before, and he's been working heavily on those kind of design with quite a few details on it that makes it that special. And this one is probably one of the first foil where the flex in the tips of the foil has been worked pretty much like a surfing fin in a way. So it's quite flexy on the tips and super rigid into the mast connection. The mast itself is super rigid, the fuselage also. But this foil has a great wave riding foil. Needs to feel kind of alive, exactly like you would expect a surfboard to be alive, to kind of flex, then rebound from the flex, and to give you some projection in the turns, and also to be able to actually turn tighter. And so there's been a lot of work on that, and on the tips of the front wing. The same for the tips of the back wing. Actually, I don't know if you could see it, but it's quite flexy also on the tips here, while it's still maintaining the maximum rigidity here in the middle. So it's working exactly like a surfboard fin, basically. So surfboard fin is going to be flexy on the tips.
Yeah, the monoblock, for those at home who are not sure whether to go with a modular system where you have your fuse and you add your front and tail wing, what makes that unique, or why would somebody go towards a mono versus more of a modular?
For more efficiency, basically, we're able to do some foil which are going to be lighter, stronger, with better glide, better performance in general, because there's no connection anymore. We could reduce pretty much everything. Any connection needs to be bulky enough to be solid in a way. And if you are not breaking any of the rigidity of any carbon fibers and stuff like that, it keeps the whole foil one piece, and there's not going to be any the flex patterns are going to be even pretty much all the way, even though we choose to add rigidity in some parts using some high modulus carbon or even ultra high modulus carbon in some places. We are able to control the flex much more than if there is any connection. As soon as there is a connection, there's going to be some rigid parts that are not going to be flexing the same way as the rest of the foil in a way. It doesn't mean that any dismantleable foil is not going to be good. It doesn't mean that, but in the ideal, you want it to work as a one piece.
Okay. So as soon as you pick the length of fuse, this like the size of front wing and even that, then you go with that module, you get the whole thing, and then you can add and differentiate your tails after.
Actually, each foil has a specific stabilizer size that goes with it. And there's also each front wing has a specific size of fuselage actually that goes with it also. So everything has been tuned like to the max to make sure that it's going to be the best fitting basically. So just to give you a comparison, the 1050, which is the biggest size so far, has a shorter fuselage than the 850 that has a shorter fuselage than the 650, because we consider that the 650 is going to be used into decent, stronger, either strong wind condition or kind of bigger waves, medium to big waves. So we want to optimize control for this one. The 850 is going to be the in between. So there's a good balance between efficiency and control on this one that we are looking for. And while on the 1050, you're not supposed to use this 1050 into huge condition. So we're going to maximize the efficiency purely. We know that control is not going to be an issue because in most conditions where you're likely to use this one, you're going to want some efficiency, pumping ability, and stuff like that. And it's actually on the water. It makes a lot of sense because you could feel straight away that you're all the time after some maneuverability with the bigger equipment. You want to be able to handle it and then to make it turn, to put it in the right spot on a wave or on a downwinder to take the good lines and stuff like that. While when you're using those small foil in heavy condition, you really want to maximize control because that's going to be about controlling those conditions. So condition decides pretty much everything.
Okay, fair enough. And so the front wing, I'm seeing it. There's that kind of Takuma ripple effect on it. What does that do?
Yeah. So those bumps are actually affecting the stall of the foil. So it's kind of making the stall much softer of the foil. That's the main attribute of those bumps. So any foil that's going to be used into those rough environment, wave riding, hitting white waters and stuff like that, that's going to make the foil much more easy to control and it's going to be more forgiving basically. And so Laurent has been working on those type of foils since a really long time. And the story behind it is actually a young guy from New Caledonia that came up to him and told him about suggesting actually to try this kind of shapes on the foil. He was not the first one actually to do it. There was a guy, I think his name is Renaud Barbier. He was doing that for Manta foil a while ago. And it's just that Laurent has been pushing really heavily the concept to make it appropriate to those specific use of those specific, I would say, free ride, wave riding foils. And he was doing already some great foils before using those bumps, but he's been the one pushing the most for sure on any of those surfy wing foiling foil to push this concept, to put it to the max. So he specialized into those foil with bumps, with a small winglets and basically extra maneuverability to make them super smooth into wave riding, downwinding, and all those kinds of stuff. They're actually fast foil also, but we are faster foil in the range, so we would consider them more of a free ridey wave riding.
Okay, foils. So what they're going to help, because sometimes when you're either hitting wave or even going behind a boat, you'll feel that turbulence or cross chop. So what you're saying is this will help reduce some of that turbulence?
Yeah, there's actually some studies, a lot of studies which are available on that. And those one I've been using on windmills and on racing boats, obviously, but there's quite a few toys that use those tubercles. It's not exactly new. It's been used before, and there's quite a few articles, that shows the exact purpose of those kind of things on a foil. It doesn't mean that without it the foil would not work, but for the specific purpose, like it does help, yeah, for sure. It's actually making more and more sense now that we are pushing the performances of the foil in each direction. it's making even more sense than before, I think.
Okay, so I'm on your website right now, and so even if I go over to the foiling tab, so you have your wing foiling, sup foiling, surf foiling, downwinding, and then windsurf foiling. So now are there breaking down foils per category? Are there some crossover there as well?
Yeah, there's some crossover because the Silk, for example, and the Pure, which is one of the other one in the range, also that's the one that most of our team riders are using on the GWA for freestyle. That's the Pure 700. This one, yeah, that's the monoblock also. We have different tails that goes on it also. Some are going to be more surfy, some are going to be more free, racy, I would say. And the in between also, we got two options of positionment on the stab to make it either extra turny or the other way would be extra control, I would say, high speed. So this foil is going to be is actually a thinner profile than the Silk. It's going to be a tiny bit faster and top speed. It's going to have a huge control. This one is really excellent control. It's still going to be turny enough, actually, in a way. So both of those foils that I've shown you are actually really good crossover foils. They go from surf foiling to sub foiling to wing foiling, obviously. You could wake foil, obviously, with them also. Could consider be able to windsurf foil also with in a free ride way, I would say. Even though we have some pretty specialized racing windsurfing foil, so we would consider that most of the guys which are foiling on the windsurf with AFS are going through the specific windsurfing foil.
Now, you were mentioning as well for control, you can play with your tail wing. Could we go into a little bit about that? Just explain those dynamics and how it affects the overall experience.
Yeah, basically there's a balance actually to work on a foil, and there's an ideal balance normally for each front wing and needs quite a special amount of stabilization to make it super efficient, especially if you want to keep this nice turning ability. If it's just to go along, you could choose quite a few stabs. You're going to be fine most of the time. That's going to add or reduce your back foot and front foot pressure if you take the wrong one, I would say. But it's still going to be rideable most of the time. But then after, if you want to have the best balance as possible for your foil, which is having really even front foot to back foot pressure, plus keeping some great maneuverability also, then you're going to need to choose a stab that's going to be really suited to the front wing. So the best way to increase the range basically of a foil and to enjoy the range all the way from maneuverability to glide to top speed control and everything, there's going to be one stab that's going to be better than the other one for that. Even though you could play around and use sometimes a bit of a bigger stab in lighter condition, you could kind of create simulation of a foil that would be slightly bigger in a way. But that's not what we would recommend as a daily use, because at some point you're going to sacrifice something. So the more we go in high performances, the more we realize that there's quite a specific size of stab that's going to be ideal for each front wing. The good thing about it though is like all those high-end foil have a huge range. So most of the time they are a bit more pricey, obviously, but most of the time you end up being able to do much more than what would you do with a more average foil, I would say. I think it's quite comparable to windsurfing sails and even kites in general. High quality gear gives you more range. Basically, you're going to be able to have a better low end, better high end, because the control is going to be increased, and still the performance is going to be higher for everything pretty much. So we realized that, and that's why actually high performance gear doesn't mean that it's going to be that technical to use. And we end up now realizing actually that a lot of customers could end up enjoying some pretty high performance gear, because there's high performance gear into bigger size of foils also. It does exist. We have a big high aspect. I don't have them with me here, actually. They're on the booth, but we've been working heavily on the high aspect foil recently for downwinding, subfoil downwinding, which I've been super keen on since quite a while. And we had great results with those foil. Those foil are crazy efficient. It's kind of mind blowing because you're gonna get obviously a huge increase in glide capability, but they're actually pretty turny for big foils. It's quite amazing from even with a span of 110 meter and or 1 meter span, you're able to turn those foil pretty well, and it's quite surprising. You end up using those ones in in activities that you wouldn't expect them to be interesting, you know. So I could wing foil them, subfoil them, obviously, but I surf foil them also. And most of the time they are good on turning because those high aspect they have a huge span, but actually their tips are super thin, you know. And sometimes I think people are kind of thinking that those big span are not going to be turny, but there's a big influence on how much meat you're going to have basically in those tips. And if it's a 1 meter span foil, if it has tiny tips, it's pretty much like saying that this foil is going to be below 1 meter in a way, you know. So it doesn't emit that much force to push it in the water, you know, those tips. So that's one of the reasons why those new super high aspect and stuff like that are actually pretty turning for those span, you know.
I guess back then, sorry, a couple of years ago, like the medium aspect, they were so fat. So if you had a 2000 that was super fat, for example, and you went to turn that, it was like a Boeing jet. But now you're saying they're making them a little bit thinner in that.
So there's actually some span, but not much surface area into those tips. So they're actually turning for that reason. It's exactly what you're saying. It's like like a couple of years ago, a 1 meter span foil was probably about 2000 size, and now the pure 1100 is actually 1100 size, and for 110 actually a span also. So it's actually a pretty small foil with a big span, but it has the efficiency of a big foil, basically. I mean, much more efficiency. So it's quite interesting to try it. And a lot of guys which have an average level of riding will be able to enjoy those one big time, because they are actually the one where the transition that you're going to have to do on wing foiling and stuff are going to be the easiest by far. Because from one simple reason, they are the foil that brings you the most glide. And the glide is what you need to be able to secure this transition, because you're going to have more time to put your hand on the handle.
And so what would you consider the pure and the silk then? Are they more of a, I guess, a mid kind of?
Yeah. Pure 700 and pure 900, they are mid aspect to us. And the silk is also a mid aspect, even though they are high aspect than most of the high aspect that used to be on the market maybe 2 years ago. Now we're pretty much talking high aspect in AFS from AR11. Under it to us is pretty much mid to high aspect. And the pure 800, which is one of the latest releases, is actually 13.3, a bit more than 30.3, I think, aspect ratio. So the glide that you get out of it is just mind blowing. It's just crazy the amount of grip that you get wing foiling to go upwind, but the glide that you get while you're pumping, the speed that you get when you're pumping with it also. And it's pretty mind blowing. I think I was not expecting foils to go that far in efficiency a couple of months ago. I thought it was not going to be possible. So yeah, it's crazy. It's gone fast this year. I think the thing is we've been working on new technologies that allowed us actually to go further on designs. And back then, the design were kind of stuck into what kind of carbon we were able to use, and the price that would the gear would end up being really pricey if we use those different type of carbon and stuff like that, But moving to AFS allowed me actually to use some different material that most brands would not be able to use that easily because they're pretty expensive, and either you work with a factory which is keen enough to do a small number of release of those foil with this material, or it's going to be complicated. And as a factory, we kind of decide whether we want to use those technologies or not. And so we've been playing around a lot with those different types of carbon. So regular carbon, HM carbon, obviously, high modulus, but also ultra high modulus that we've been using quite a lot lately for all those HAs and all those plain actually that silk and pure in the range.
Yeah, I was talking to one of the co-founders of Apple Tree Surfboards the other day. They're based out of Holland and Portugal.
Yeah.
And they're a factory as well. And he said the exact same thing. He can then test, develop, play, and go and use that gear and come back on a much smaller scale rather than having to ramp up production and then not worrying about if it's going to sell
Absolutely.
or not. Because then you're actually able to push out gear that's of quality rather than selling out batches, which happens sometimes. Right. Before we get too far ahead, I just want to, for those at home who are just getting into, what is aspect ratio and how would that affect your choice in maybe buying a foil?
Well, that's going to be fun. I think the best comparison would be a glider compared to a jet plane, basically. So bigger aspect ratio, like on a glider, is going to allow you to get a great efficiency of the foil without being into a great energy environment. Basically, low energy environment, either without an engine or when you need some glide without something to push you. And when you're going to want to exploit for downwinding is a great example. You want something that's going to be going along without spending too much energy. So you want those big span and less chord as possible because that's going to be some friction. And you want those ones to be able to glide into those kind of low energy environment in a way. While on the other hand, lower aspect are going to need quite a lot of energy to be efficient, but they're going to be great on control on the other side. So it's exactly like having a glider that's not going to be motorized at all, but that's going to be super efficient as long as you put it in the air, it's going to glide forever. And the jet plane is going to need to be powered up all the time to be able to go fast, first of all. But then after, you're gonna be able to create a lot of control with this kind of shape. So all the racy foil or the freestyle foil, wave riding foil, most of the time they're gonna have a reduced span to be able to turn really quickly, even in high speed. While the gliders, it's not their purpose to be super turny in high speed. They're gonna be turny in low to average to medium speed. But their main goal is not top speed, it's going to be average speed, basically. And that's why for downwinding, and it's going to be obviously a great choice. They're super efficient. If you use too much of a small span for downwinding, you will feel like you're going to be always underpowered by your foil, basically. It's not going to want to create lift until you get to a huge bump with a really steep, or you're going to have to take your wing again in your hand and to be powered up. You need to be powered up with those small foil. That's going to create a lot of control. There's obviously the in-between also. Those foil which are kind of mid to high aspect. They are compromised, but for sure for people which are looking for new sensation, like going high aspect is quite a good solution because they have a good low hand and they have huge glides. So that's going to help a transition, as I was saying just before, but also to create some great pumping abilities for guys which are struggling a bit with the whole pumping thing. The high aspect it's huge what they bring to the table. So it's kind of good to mix it up, I think, because there's no one single solution to make it great. There's some foil which are going to be fantastic in some condition, and some other one are going to be great also for depending on what you search for. But it's good to try them out, I think, because some people are going to be surprised by how much some of those high performance foil are actually pretty easy to use and efficient to the point that it's going to help dramatically for some stuff.
Okay. Yeah, because we'll always see everywhere now are pumping videos, and then everybody's asking, what are they riding? What are they riding? How
Exactly,
can they
yeah.
do
Yeah.
that? And so then the whole discussion takes off from there. But could we look a little bit at cord as well? So explain those for people at home.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So basically, so I was talking about the span, obviously, span from one tip to the other. So that's going to be this distance here. And the cord is going to be that distance, basically. So the thinner it gets this way, the more efficient is going to be the foil, especially in quite soft conditions.
For those of you that are just on audio, Richard's showing us, so they have the width of the foil and then just how thick that foil is, I guess, from from the front of the foil working down towards the fuse. So that's what we're talking about, the cord. But they're pretty thin overall in general, right?
Yeah, those one. Yeah, this one is actually a tiny bit thicker than the pure, but still, so that's going to create also some power. And depending on the speed range that you're aiming to fly, and you're going to use some different profile basically. So a racing foil is going to be super thin. A wave riding foil doesn't want to be that thin because super thin foil needs to go fast to be comfortable, while a tiny bit thicker profile will be really comfortable in speeds that are going to be ideal for wave riding, basically. So there's each program of foil is going to have a specific range of speed where it's going to excel. And that's what you're using for. Let's say if you compare that to any car or whatever, the Formula One is not going to be ideal to drive into a super small city with really sharp edges and stuff like that, sharp corners. You're going to be probably better on going on a karting for this kind of stuff. While if you go a tiny bit wider streets and stuff like that, maybe like Monaco, that's a good example because Formula One are to the cities there, then you will be able to use a bigger car, Formula One. And if it goes even higher in speed, that's probably going to be a different shape again. That's going to be ideal. So there's different sizes of foil, of span and everything that are going to be ideal for each speed of riding, basically. So the optimization of the size of the stab, the thickness of the profile, and the profile itself that we're going to choose is going to be on whether the speed range, the ideal speed range for this foil is going to be, let's say, from 10 knots to 20 knots, or if it's going to be from 25 knots to 35 knots, basically, of riding, basically. I'm not even talking about the wind, the amount of wind that you're going to be riding, but just the speed that you are aiming to ride, because there's basically approximately around 10 knots of ideal range for any foil between 10, 12 knots, maybe 13 knots. And this range is not extendable at all. So it's basically a foil which are super good at really high speed will never be fantastic at super low speed. That's not working this way. And the other way around. Then you could move it either super low or super high.
Yeah, because I was on the lake here on the island. I think it was last week, and one of my buddies windsurf foils, and I tried to keep up with him with my mid-aspect Armstrong that I have. Crazy how fast when surf foiling can be. He was just ripping. So then I was trying to catch up, and eventually I gave up because if I was going to fall, the wipeout would have been catastrophic. But it's a fascinating learning about all of that because there's a lot of questions floating around, and people are there's so much gear now that they're always curious what to do. So for maneuverability, you're saying we can play with either the front wing, but it's best to get your stab, so your tail wing, like you can cheat that a little bit for maneuverability, but you'll end up having more front foot or back foot pressure is what you're saying if it's not equally matched.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So basically for this one, it's a good example. I think it's a pretty small stab for this size. That actually has also a pretty specific shape. It's actually really thin stab. It's super thin stab because we've been working on the flex for it. So it's actually flexy in the tips, pretty thin, but with a profile that's still going to be forgiving enough to be a great wave riding stab, basically. For the gliders, for the HA, we have obviously HA stab also, which are going to be great optimization of the glide, because the glide is going to be the priority for those stabs. For those foil, the priority is going to be control, maneuverability and control at the same time. So everything is optimized for that. The outline of the stab that you can see here, and obviously the profile of the stab also, so as the span of it. So it's just a general balance, and when you go on a foil that's really well balanced, you fully know that it's going to be more forgiving than the foil that's not balanced, basically. If you end up having to compensate a lot of front foot or back foot pressure on your foil, there's something wrong about it. And if you need to compensate in normal condition, if you get into heavier condition, the compensation that you're going to need to do is going to be huge, and you're going to lose a lot of control. With those modern foil, basically, like what Laurent is always telling us as a designer, is telling me that he will be able to stop designing foil when he will be able to get a foil that you could ride without with closing your eyes and still be able to ride. So he's basically trying to get a foil that is going to be that intuitive that basically you're not going to have to concentrate yourself on putting the right amount of pressure on any legs and whatnot. And this foil is actually pretty close on that. It's the balance of it is pretty surprising. You expect to be on the foil and starting to fight a bit against your front foot to trying to push down the foil and stuff like we used to do before. It doesn't work like that anymore. This one is super even. And that's why you could keep your mind and concentration on the lines that you're going to take wave riding, because you don't need to take care of the height on the mast of the foil, because the foil is pretty much dealing with that automatically.
So then with your mast track on your foil board, does it matter if you move that foil all the way to the front, all the way to the back, put it somewhere in the middle? How does that affect everything?
Well, yeah, it's going to affect a tiny bit, because you could still refine exactly where it's going to be the best position. But even if you put it in the wrong position, there's not going to be a huge effort for you to compensate. And because of this balance, super balance, exactly like being on the middle of a stick, like there's not going to take much effort to go from back foot to front foot, And that was a big part of the job on this foil, is creating this whole maneuverability. So it feels like you're on a balloon, basically. It doesn't angle. The transition from rail to rail is going to be perfectly fluid. And that was the goal for this specific foil, On other foil, we're going to work on some other stuff, even though we're trying to work on something that's going to be efficient enough and to be able to still turn those foil which are not supposed to be turny originally. We want everything to be turny enough, obviously, and we want everything to be glidey enough, even though the glide was not a priority on this foil. It's super glidey compared to what was on the market like even a couple of months ago, It's just that the glider that we create since then have pushed the glide to a level that there's no discussion on what's glide the most or not, but it's super glidey as well. Because you want a surf foil to be able to pump around and stuff like that. So if there is no wave connection, it's not a good surf foil anymore. So you need to have a maneuverability and pumping ability at the same time.
And how do you make foils for those who are not sure? Is it a mold? Let's go over the basics.
Yeah. So it's a big aluminum mold. Where there's a lot of we're doing only pre-packed carbon, so it's different layers of pre-packed carbon of different type of qualities depending on what you're aiming for. If you're aiming extreme rigidity, you're going to put some specific type of carbon in the middle section, for example. If you're aiming for a tiny bit more flex in some parts, you're going to use a different type of carbon with different layers. And then after all those carbon layers are put into a mold, aluminum mold that's going to be that we put some heat on it. Basically, it's going to be cooked, and then after this long process of finishing, there's a lot of sanding to make sure it's going to be extra smooth and stuff like that. Plus, the whole painting, and there's a lot of time after it gets out from the mold to make it perfect. Basically.
Okay. Now, a lot of those then, so are you having to make different, so if you're going to do R&D, for example, you're making different molds or?
Yeah, we do some non-definitive mold for some of the prototypes. We do some mold that's going to be used just for a few prototypes until we kind of know which design we're going for. And then after, those ones are going to be different from the production mold, which are going to be bigger, heavier, more solid. And but there's a lot of work on the computer at first. We work with a few designers. We work with a designer in the UK, who's Kevin Hellaway, has a huge experience in boat foiling. And he's been a huge help for us for some of those specific foil, the gliders and some of the racing foil. He's been the one involved with it, and we've been using Laurent on the other side for the whole wave riding experience, because you have a huge experience actually on those type of foil. So, and with Kevin, we work a lot on CFD, and so we are creating, basically we are putting on the paper the range of the foil that we're looking for, and he's going to create a profile, and we're going to tweak some stuff to make it either a bit turny or increasing the control and stuff like that. We're trying to decide as much as possible on paper on what are we looking for, and we're going to put all the numbers that we need to make sure it's going to go this way. Basically.
And then for testing, is it pro riders that test this stuff? Does a computer help kind of have a ballpark of what it will perform like? Or?
So Kevin is able to gives us, even before the first prototype, to tell us what this design is going to do. And Laurent on the other side pretty much knows also, even though he's not using the computer as much as Kevin. He knows from experience, because he's been doing so many prototypes on his own that he's been testing. It's mind-blowing the amount of testing he's been doing. So there's two different ways, but depending on the type of foil that we are creating, there's going to be some guys in the company which are going to be more able to test into this or this category. Let's say for speed wing foiling, there's a few guys actually internally, some of the engineers, Kevin and Quentin and Bruno, who's the chief tester, who are going to be able to test those ones. I might have a go on it also. Some of the pro riders also, obviously. But at first, normally, most of the guys inside the company are testing it to see if if it looks right, first of all. Then after, to push it to the max, sometimes we're going to have our riders which are going to test it, obviously, at some point. But we're making sure that the whole structure is going to be ideal and the performance level is already there. And then after, we push it to the max to end up knowing exactly if it's top notch or not. And for the gliders and downwind foil, I'm testing quite a lot myself, because I'm based in the south of France. And it's a pretty famous location for downwinding. I've been fond of downwinding since day one, so I'm taking care as much as possible of.
Hey, that's fun. Whereabouts are you in the south of France?
Close from Marseille, between Marseille and Toulon. And the Mediterranean coast is actually perfect for downwinding. It's crazy. The condition that we get there is just mind blowing. So I've been really passionate by that side of the whole foiling. Since 2017, I was downwinding on a subfoil with a great friend of mine, and I've kept on doing that, since that. And the gear that we did develop, it's just crazy. The amount of performance you get out of it is just mind blowing. So we go pretty often now for long distances, and I've gone for a bit more than 100 Ks recently, foiling for. Yeah, and all around the coast, between Marseille and the other way around. So yeah, I mean, great spot for that. Goes pretty fast. You could end up doing some pretty long distances a bit further, a bit out from the coast, so the whole experience is pretty intense because the water is pretty dark and surrounded by boats and stuff like that.
Yeah, how far offshore do you have to go?
It's not that far offshore. You end up being either, I would say, between 500 meters and maybe 2 Ks. There's no need to go further offshore. Normally, the runs that we have, they align pretty well. You could follow the coastline pretty close, but still, even just the color of the water, changed. It's pretty dark blue. And there's big fish. You could see big fish, and yeah, I mean, this it's a different adventure, but it's great. Yeah, it's great. It's actually a kind of practice where it's never gonna be too crowded, So it's yeah, probably the closest I could see from being the full package for freedom of surfing. That there's no limitation on anything. Basically, you could do as many turns as you want. There won't be anybody on your way because the ocean is quite big. So
when's the best seasons then for you there for wind? Like up here, it's spring and fall, but what's it like in France?
I would say the same. Yes, I mean winter time, spring and fall are ideal. Even though summertime could be windy, like July has been pretty windy. I was there like last week. We had a full week of strong wind between 25 and 45 knots, I would say.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
You could get flat sometimes in summertime also, but most of time, fall and autumn, it's windy. Yeah, winter time is windy also. Sometimes it's kind of could be on and off in the summer, but the rest of the time is pretty windy there.
What did your first, I guess, when was it? And what did your first foil flight feel like? And did you think that this would ever get this big?
Yeah, no, that's a good question actually, because I'll tell you what, like if you asked me this question a couple of months ago, I think I would have been wrong because I would have almost forgot the first time I flew actually on a foil. And I realized like a couple of months ago that my first go on a foil was behind a boat with a friend in French Polynesia near Tahiti. And it was in 2003. So a long time ago. And it was that far away from me that I didn't even realize that it was something that I was not even shocked or excited by back then. And it was a friend of mine who did build this hydrofoil itself. He was a friend of mine that I was competing kiteboarding with. And we tested this gear, and I've done my first few flights, but never got, they've been successful, those flights, but never got super excited by it because I feel like the fact that I was getting towed by a boat basically was not allowing me basically to fantasize on what can I go without, what can I do without the boat basically, and that's why I would. Bruno in the company, actually in AFS, was one of the first guys to foil, actually, to windsurf foil and to subfoil in 2009. So super early, actually earlier than Kai. And he was one of the pioneers, big time for foiling. There were some guys foiling before him, but subfoiling, I think he was really one of the first guys actually foiling without any sail or whatever. He was windsurfing foiling obviously before. His name is Bruno André, and yeah, he was doing that really long time ago. But yeah, first experience was 2003, and I think my second experience was probably kite foiling, maybe I would say around 2010, something like that. And then after proper surf foiling, subfoiling, and 2016.
So what were those foils made? That was aluminum back then, right?
Yeah, it was already fiberglass because he was already working with carbon fiberglass because he used to do kiteboard. He had a small kiteboard shape company back then. He's now actually doing some Vaha, so the French Polynesian canoe, actually. He now is still working actually a lot with carbon and fiberglass and stuff like that. But yeah, back then it was the first one I've tried was already carbon and fiberglass. And the other one that I've tried after when I was kiteboarding was still carbon. I think it was the brand was back then Carafino. He was one of the pioneers, actually, one of the first one on the market back then. I think he was based in Maui, if I remember well.
So it didn't. I guess it didn't go mainstream until. So it was just more nichey back then, I guess, eh?
Absolutely, that's quite strange actually, because it's really it's pretty unique to have a sport that a lot of guys that I know have been fiddling around like back then without being obsessed by it, and all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, just seeing somebody doing something different with it, basically, open all the eyes on what can we do with it. And I think it was really the fact that Kai showed us, and in a way that you're able to glide without any other power than either the wind or the swell. To me, the first shocking, the shocking part was the downwinding images from Kai that led me to think that it was going to be the future, because it really was showing the efficiency of a foil basically. Before that, if you had to get pulled by a boat, or if you had to get pulled by a kite or something like that, or even by a windsurfing sail, I thought it was going to be something, but not as exciting as something that would be able to work without being pulled by something basically, and being able to ride some swell for a long time. Or
so that added level of freedom rather than being more restricted.
it's exactly that. Yeah, I think that's the freedom. The freedom part of it is what got a lot of people excited. At least me, for sure. That's why I'm obsessed with downwinding, because that's the activity where the freedom is endless. And yeah, straight away I got hooked on it, because I felt like even in 20 years, I'm still going to be able to enjoy myself doing that. Whether there's going to be 500 person on the water or not, that's not going to change nothing. On a regular surf spot, that's a different situation. So yeah, I think freedom is a big part of it for sure.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's just something that the world's going in one direction, and I think we're quite happy to keep going in this one. So we talked a lot about your foils, but I see here that you're also making boards. And can we talk a little bit about your boards as well?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, on the board, actually the foil design and the efficiency of the foil pushed us actually to go further also on board designs. And it's quite funny how much one thing led to something, to a lot of work basically on the boards also, because once you're creating some foil which are going to be super efficient, sometimes you're going to sacrifice a tiny bit of low end, for example. So you're going to need to be able to compensate that on the board to make sure that they're going to be helping you to create this great pop-up ability. So on the left side of the screen, you could see the Pro 4.5. That's the board that most of our pro riders are riding during the comps. So it's a pretty chunky board, super short, obviously, but still really efficient. It actually goes pretty easily in flight. Actually, it's quite surprising for about this size. Super compact, great for rotations, obviously, but good for wave riding also, because super turny. There's no the length of the board. You don't feel at all the length of the board. So it's actually a really efficient board, chopped off. And this is the Fly 4.8, great surf foiling beginner board, beginner to average, I would say. It's 39 liters, pretty easy to get into waves with it. You could kite with it, and obviously wing with it also if the wind is decent, or if you're a really lightweight person. On the right side of the screen, that's the new Fly actually. So those one have a new shape with a deep concave around the feet position, with the extra volume on the nose. So the goal was to reduce the thickness on the feet to make sure that the foil fitting is going to be ideal. So we've been working heavily on that to make sure that the foil feel is going to be as good as it gets, because that's the best way to get some more precision on and also some a better transmission of the effort basically between your turn when you're trying to turn or when you're trying to get into a pumping sequence. You want a board that's going to be super responsive to make sure that the information is going to get to the foil straight away. And right under it's the Blackbird. That's the downwind board that we've been developing last year. It's a great board, great for downwinding, obviously, but it's also beast in light wind winging. As you might know now, those type of boards are super efficient in light to medium wind actually. So they basically allows you to ride some smaller foil winging than what you would use normally in those specific conditions, because the takeoff ability is that good that you don't need to have a big foil anymore, pretty much. Or if you put a big foil on it, obviously you're going to be able to ride into some condition that light that normally you would not even expect to be able to be on the water. So.
And then is there a cutout on the bottom here, or is that graphics? Or
yeah, so there's actually a mix between a pintail and a square tail. So it's called a T-tail basically. I don't think there's the right view, maybe under with some photos and stuff like that, but it's basically a mix of the extreme glide of the pintail and the extra stability of the square tail. So when the board goes along, the faster it goes, the more it's going to release those stabilizer, and they're going to be above the water, while the pintail is still going to be in the water. So it's going to be super efficient. Basically, it's a board that's pretty stable for a board of this size, but still super efficient while still being pretty stable. So
is this the one that you're playing on all the time?
Yeah, because I use it for winging, I use it for subfoiling, and I use it for downwinding also.
Okay. Then you have your fire and your fly?
Yeah, fire and fly. They were boards that we had already last year in the range. Pretty compact board, compact but really easy. Great stability, wider tail, wider nose also. And depending on the sizes, they're actually board which you could ride with the average volume that you would ride normally. You could end up reducing the length of the board quite dramatically, while still maintaining great stability. So great board overall and really well priced also.
Oh, cool. Okay. And then we had, I think you had wings as well, I believe we were going to look at too. So let's even start with foiling. So wing foil, and then go over to your wings. Okay. So who's designing these ones?
We're working with a guy actually in Brittany, pretty close from the factory. We work with him since quite a while. He's got a great experience on designing wings and kites. His name is Erwan. And yeah, we've been successful with our wings also. They are great, and the handling on them is fantastic. In fact, they're actually really great all-around wing. Still maintaining a level of performance super high. Our riders on the World Tour are doing fantastic at the moment. They're actually 2 on the podium right now. So I think they're doing a great job with this wing. The Diamond is the latest release. That's a free ride performance wing. And it's going to get you to the best level, for whether you're wave riding, free riding, freestyling, or racing. That's a wing that's going to be super efficient in most cases. And the other wing in the range that we have is the Wild. This one is a more free racy wing, so pretty close from a windsurfing camber sail, I would say. So it's pretty flat profile. You want to be powered up on this one to be able to get the best of it. It has a great upswing ability. That's not the wing we sell the most because it has a pretty specific profile, and the Diamond is actually not far behind performance-wise for any racing, even though in some type of racing, the Diamond might even be better. And so we are pushing more the Diamond than the Wild at the moment, because we felt like the general handling was better on the Diamond. You could do much more stuff with it, and while still maintaining a level of performance that's going to be perfect. And the Wilf is the wing that we've been selling for last 2 years. Great wing, great all-round wheel also. Softer than the Diamond, so it's going to be ideal for any lightweight riders or people which are riding in pretty strong wind that wants the comfort of a wing that's going to be really forgiving, basically. The Diamond is going to be a bit more sporty. It's going to have a more direct feel, which is great for anybody sporty or that wants to feel the power of the wing in his hands and to have a great jumping ability. Also, the hang time that you're going to get out of it. While the Wolf is going to be a bit more forgiving, a bit less hang time, but really soft in your hands. That's going to be all the gusts are going to go through the wing without pulling you too much and stuff like that. So great success. We've been super successful with this.
Yeah, I think for learning, the comfort is pretty important, and because I found that in some older wings actually that I started riding it hard handles, and hard handles are great if you want a specific kind of riding, but still the other handles for teaching and for learning I found were good.
Absolutely. So actually the handles on the Wilf, they look the same as the one on the Diamond, but they're actually softer than the one on the Diamond. On the Diamond, there's an extra rigidity on the handles. It's actually in between a soft handle and a rigid handle. And we did find that it was interesting actually to keep a tiny bit of softness on the handles, because even just for the comfort of your wrist and the fact that the wing is going to get into the wind sometimes more precisely if the handles keeps moving a tiny bit more. It's kind of strange to experiment, but we've been trying a lot of hard handles on those wings. Sometimes the performance was not as good as with those soft handles, because the angles that you would get out of it, either you're precisely on it, and that's perfect, but if you're a tiny bit off, it could go wrong, basically. So it's kind of not forgiving, basically, rigid handle. And so the in-between was a great choice for this wing, because the extra rigidity of the frame of the wing already was something that was adding a tiny bit of physicality to the wing. And if you go full blast, super rigid frame plus super rigid handles, some guys are not going to like it after a while, because on long sessions, you will feel them sometimes.
Even just the hands, to be honest, like your hands will get torn apart a little bit more. It's almost like windsurfing in cold water. And
yeah,
if you're in the ocean 4 or 5 days and you're a softie, because we're used to fresh water, it definitely starts to tear you apart a little bit.
No, it does. I agree.
Nice. So you're getting excited then. So right now you're at an event in Germany, you were saying?
Yeah. It's called the Kitesurf Masters. So it's originally a huge kitesurfing event, but there's a wing foiling also, obviously, on this event, and it's big. I think there's a bit more than 100 brands which are coming over. I'm not sure if it's only kite brands or whatever, but there's loads of tents and loads of brands showing their product there. So it's probably one of the biggest in Europe, I think, if not the biggest.
And then you're heading over to Hood River for AWSI?
Yeah. I'm going to be in Texas a bit before, and then Florida, and then to Hood River. Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever think that your transition into pro sports would lead you down this career path that you have now? And
well, no, at first no, but I was that passionate that I guess I was dreaming about it. That until I got into pretty deep into my kiteboarding career. Now I was not expecting that, but I could tell that my passion led me to work a lot on some stuff that I guess and I hope got me that knowledge of market, and I'm trying to get involved with as many things as possible, because I want to understand as much as possible. So that's why I love doing a good bit of R&D also, because it helps me a lot to be a better salesman, basically, to have the knowledge on understanding how foil works, and where can we go with next, what's going to be next step for the gear, what's going to be next trend I'm really passionate about what's going to be the future of our practice, basically, and understanding what people are going to get bored with and what people are going to be willing to invest themselves into after. And that's my obsession, basically. So that's why I'm trying to always have an eye on what's going to be next, basically. And so far, I think I felt it okay. Like downwinding, I was downwinding on the SUP, like a foil in 2017. It's booming now. So I kind of know that, yeah, I felt it since quite a long time that it was going to be successful at some point. And some part of the our sports are not going to be that successful, but that's fine. There's people which are still going to enjoy it in some part of the world. So I'm not chasing business only. I'm chasing passion, basically. So
yeah, I think that's the key. Yeah. Yeah, that's the key right there, because then anything else is fluff, and fluff will just disappear.
exactly. So I'm trying to keep on practicing as much as possible: wing foiling, downwinding, sub foiling, surf foiling, depending on where I'm going on the coast. Basically, for my commercial tour or promo tour or whatever, I'm going to be on phases where I'm going to be focusing heavily on the pure wave riding without a wing or whatever, surf foiling. Then it's going to be pure wake of downwinding, and sometimes I could mix up in the same place also. But there's different area in France, and the same in the US, and all of the places where it's going to be mainly surf foiling, or other places are going to be mainly wing foiling and stuff like that, And we want to be trying to get good at a lot of those practice. So we are working with some great riders and great designers.
Yeah, because on the Great Lakes, for example, I did a lot of windsurfing there, and that's kind of where I introduced myself a little bit to waves, I guess. You could potentially, and on a decent day, you could do some downwinding for sure, and get some pretty long swell rides. Absolutely, would be beautiful there. Because
I've been doing loads. I've been doing the loads of that. Actually, we've got a big lake close to Marseille, who's really famous for downwinding. So all my first go downwinding were on this one. It's a 20K. It's a 20K run, but it gets super strong wind sometimes, this lake, and it's actually great for downwinding. It's fantastic. It's like a peeling wave, pretty much. You get to waves like maybe a bit more than 1 meter wave there, a proper meter wave. Yeah, you could. I've been surf foiling downwind also this lake before, so like this proper waves, and it's actually a really popular spot for learning downwinding because the pop-up is easier than when you go in the sea, because the fetch and the wave period is actually shorter because it's a lake.
what do you think about, because now the GWA opened up their new surf freestyle kind of division where they're pushing a little bit more into the surf compared to last year. What do you think about that, putting foils into the whitewater? Have you gone through a washing machine with a foil? Have you had that experience yet?
It's kind of, no, I haven't been pushing too much that side of it, because I've been pushing that much that side of it for windsurfing and kiteboarding back then. I was really into wave riding or kiteboarding. So the whole whitewater hitting stuff like that, that's not exactly what I'm going to be chasing the most. I would be more open faces, roundhouse cutback and stuff like that, or even just downwinding wave riding, So there's plenty of swell. With some bumps are going to be, there's going to be a tiny bit of whitewater on it, You always be able to hit those one on those swell, but it's more going to be high speed carving and stuff like that. I'm going to be excited about the whole like a super snappy turn into a small wave hitting the whitewater. I think it's okay. It's quite good actually to show that part also, but that's not what's gonna get me excited, because I feel like foiling is not the exact ideal toy, I would say, to wave ride this way, even though it does the work fine. I'm more into open faces surfing. I guess I'm kind of the same for regular surfing also. Was more into bigger waves, more open faces turn than.
Like from me foiling, A, it's sightseeing. B, it's just slightly bigger swell, which is really fun to ride, because then you just get that sensation of freedom for so much longer, which I think is pretty awesome.
Exactly, absolutely.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to cover?
Well, no. I think we've gone around all the good subjects. Yeah. So I hope all the viewers and stuff like will get a chance to find those new sensation exciting. There's a lot of stuff to try, and I think it's really important to be keen and curious enough to try all the good stuff that this whole foiling thing is going to be bringing us, because wing foiling is a great example of how could you get into this foiling world. But then after, there's actually quite a lot of other opportunities to enjoy yourself with the same foil that you're going to be riding wing foiling. So plenty of stuff to try and to keep being passionate about, like for next 50 years.
Oh yeah, I think so. That's my goal. If I can walk, I'll be able to foil.
Yeah, exactly. That's my goal too.
Awesome. So for those at home that want to reach out, what's the easiest way for them to get a hold of you?
You could contact us on social media, like Instagram, Facebook, or on the contact address from Foil & Co. Foil & Co. is the main company basically that's holding AFS and AHD. We're also doing AHD windsurfing board. Yeah, so you'll find us on the net. And AFS Foil otherwise on Instagram and
okay, Facebook. Perfect. Well, hey, Richard, I want to say thanks a lot for joining, and looking forward to seeing your team in Hood River. I think that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
We'll see you soon.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Luke.